I feel like nobody's really talking about Pyro Traveler, when in fact, this Pyro version is actually pretty good with all things considered. Although, let's be honest, the bar has been set very low when it comes to Traveler's potential, thanks to incidents like the Hydro version. And truth be told, Pyro Traveler also comes with a set of really dumb drawbacks, which I will highlight in this video, but still. I also want to showcase the current best Pyro Traveler's builds and teams because it is actually worth building this unit at the end of the day, and I'll explain why in a moment. But first, this video is sponsored by Tribe 9, a free-to-play extreme action RPG now available on PC and mobile. Not only that, this game was worked on by the creator of Danganronpa series and developed and published by Akatsuki Games. Set in a future Tokyo dominated by death games, this isn't your typical title, and it will defy your expectations with unique stories, personalities, and worldviews. Seriously, the cast of characters is wild. What's also cool, you'll be able to experience the game in two ways. The map traversal is in 2D with beautiful pixel graphics, but the battles take in 3D. In fact, gameplay feels super fluid. It's legit like a full-on console title. But be careful, some of these powerful enemies do not mess around, and too many mistakes can lead to death, so be sure to adapt to these challenges and use powerful skills. But yeah, I actually had a chance to play this game before, and not only did the story pull on my heartstrings, but it was also beating fast in boss battles. So make sure to download Tribe 9 by using my link in the description or scan the QR code, because now is the best moment to play it, since for a limited time, you can claim a free character skin and starter supplies for participating in the game's launch. So don't wait and check out Tribe 9 now. Okay, so in a nutshell, Pyro Traveler's whole gimmick is that they also can enter into Night Soul state and deal constant pyro damage even when off-field. Simply press the skill button and you'll notice a Night Soul bar lights up and starts decreasing, while at the same time, a small amount of pyro damage is dealt to nearby enemies. You could also hold down the skill for another version of damage application, which happens every 3 seconds as a coordinated attack, but to me it just seems like a joke? I don't know. Seriously, it's really bad. Aside from the fact it has a funny way of following attacks even from far away, it's still absolutely not worth using over the tap version, at least as far as I'm aware. Also, as you can see, I've raised talents to level 6, 11, and 13. And yeah, I actually crowned the burst. But in all honesty, aside from the burst, I wouldn't bother leveling the other 2 talents since their damage is like whatever, unless you want to fully maximize everything. Also, I'm pretty sure there's a cap on how much you can raise talents because you need this special material, which Genshin's wiki states that there's a maximum of 10 available as of now. Anyway, let's talk about the burst instead. It literally just deals damage and then generates some Night Soul points over 4 seconds. Now, the multiplier of the burst is pretty good, and you can go for some funny team comps that result in big burst damage to enemies. But the rest of the Traveler's kit is really underwhelming when it comes to dealing damage. So this burst is mostly used for Night Soul points generation. In fact, here's a quick overview of how many Night Soul points the Traveler can generate, but long story short, skill is the only way to enter into Night Soul blessing state, so keep that in mind. Now, when looking at the passives, the first one simply increases the skill's range if there's over 20 Night Soul points left, but I'll be honest, even with this boost, one of the biggest problems with Pyro Traveler is the really disappointing skill range. Seriously, you can see me trying to explode some blooms on the ground, and just look how close you need to stand to them to trigger Burgeon. So while the skill's pyro application is decent, the range is very small, and I mean, yeah, it acts almost the same way as cookies, but you can see the difference in range is like night and day. Now, there's the other passive, which helps Traveler regain 5 energy every 12 seconds when during the skill, somebody triggers pyro-related reaction. And in addition, when someone triggers Night Soul Burst, then extra 4 energy is granted. It's pretty decent, but one annoying thing I've noticed, when using Traveler with Cinder City artifact set, and if there are no Natlan units in the team, you'd think since Traveler enters into Night Soul state, you could trigger Night Soul Burst. Nope, not possible. Traveler is not from Natlan. So that also means goodbye to the 2-set bonus, which will not help recover energy. So in that case, you need an actual Natlan unit in the team to benefit from both the passive and 2-set bonus of Cinder City. Okay, so that's the quick overview of the kit itself, but we also have constellations. You'll notice after finishing the Archon quest, all 6 constellations are lit up. However, if you read them, you'll soon understand all of these 6 constellations serve only one purpose: to make the Pyro Traveler stronger against the latest weekly boss. I'll admit it, it's pretty cool and thematic way to buff up the main character. And it's actually quite funny when I can hit with my burst for almost the same amount as I can with Mawika. Plus, the Pyro Traveler also can unleash these cool air slash attacks while fighting finding the boss. So I'd say one of the cooler purposes of this Traveler is that you can use it quite effectively against this weekly boss. However, you can actually unlock true constellations by maxing out each tribe's reputation, and then by using these blazing flint ores, you can currently go up to C5. And aside from C3 and C5 giving the usual plus 3 levels to skill and burst respectively, C1 grants 6% damage increase to the current character when the skill is active, and if they are in Night Soul Blessing state, then they gain 9% extra, so 15% damage total. It's a small but decent way to boost damage for the active unit. Then C2 basically allows Traveler to gain more Night Soul points after pyro-related reactions are triggered, and then C4 states that after using the burst, 20% pyro damage bonus is granted for 9 seconds to the Traveler. We are still missing the final 6th constellation, and I've heard rumors this might actually give Pyro Infusion to Traveler's basic attacks, which could be really cool. So once C6 is available, I'll probably make a video about it. But for now, it's best to build Traveler as a sub DPS or just support, and to do this, we actually need to look at some of the teams. Okay, let's start off with the most obvious role, Pyro Traveler with Cinder City artifact set, and I just go for the usual attack, pyro, and crit main stats. But if you can't trigger the burst consistently, get ER Sword or ER Sands. Now, with this build, I've tested out Chevre's teams. Yeah, Pyro Traveler is pretty good here, especially in Hyper Raiden team comp like this one, although I did notice there are some rotation inconsistencies if playing with Kujo Sara, but overall, in a lot of variations, Pyro Traveler is a cheap option to go for. Then there's also burning teams with Kniech and Emily. This is actually my favorite team, everything aligns pretty much perfectly, and aside from that annoying usual problem of Cinder City buff not refreshing properly against burning target, everything else is great. Now, you might be wondering, Pyro Traveler's kit is very similar to Movwika's. Is Traveler ever a better option than her for these teams? The answer is, most of the time, nah. Movwika's burst is pretty insane, and that 40% damage boost she provides is nothing to scoff at. However, in some edge cases, for example, that Hyper Raiden Chevre's team, you wouldn't really be able to trigger Movwika's burst each rotation. Plus, since she has no energy, Raiden's damage also drops off, so Pyro Traveler ends up being a pretty decent option in it. Now, we also have Burgeon teams, and I'll be honest, this is probably the best team for Pyro Traveler, and thanks to the current Abyss cycle, it's quite easy to see why. In a team with someone like Nahida, Xingqiu, and Kokomi, each Burgeon can easily hit for big damage very fast thanks to the skill's Pyro application, although I'd say this is one of those teams where it actually matters to have the burst ready, since it does provide a big chunk of Night Soul points, and the more Night Soul points Traveler has, the longer the skill's duration. Well, technically, it will end after 12 seconds, but the burst helps achieve this max duration. Still, the burst costs 70, and particle generation is pretty bad, so energy recharge is going to be quite valuable for this build. And I found Sacrificial Sword to be the perfect answer, since it can refresh the skill's cooldown, and while there is some weird ruling about casting the skill twice in the row and resetting the Night Soul bar back to 42 points, the way I do it is by just simply using the skill and burst, then switch to other units, do a bit of their stuff, and go back to the Traveler and recast the skill again. So yeah, Sacrificial Sword is quite the MVP for this build, but you can also just go for any other energy recharge or elemental mastery sword. And as for artifacts, a mix of elemental mastery, 2/2 sets, flop, or gilded set are the usual loadouts for a Burgeon damage dealer. Finally, we have the main DPS Traveler, and I'm gonna be honest, as I said, it's only the burst that deals big damage, everything else pales in comparison. And without Pyro Infusion, there's only Benny Boy's burst at C6 that helps Pyro Traveler roleplay as on-field pyro damage dealer. But if you really want to have fun as a main DPS, just do the weekly boss fight, or let's see how impactful the final constellation is going to be. Overall, I'd say Pyro Traveler is one of the better versions, even if I did point out quite a few problems. Yes, you could say that essentially for majority of teams, this Traveler is just a walking Cinder City buff, plus the C1 can provide some extra damage boost. But even then, you can also easily use them in Burgeon comps, and who knows, maybe in the future when Final Tribe is released, that C6 upgrade might allow us to play with Pyro Traveler as main DPS. And come on, it's a cheap unit you can build, only the burst right now is worth leveling, so not very expensive if you already have leveled the Traveler. But I do find it annoying that without Natlan unit present, you end up missing out on a lot of energy, which means the burst, which is the hardest hitting attack, won't trigger so reliably unless you build for a lot of energy recharge. March. But yeah, hope you found this video interesting. It's a bit shorter than usual since I had a major back injury, and even with the medicine I'm on, it's pretty painful to sit on this chair, so I gotta get some rest. Anyway, thank you for watching, be sure to hit that like button on this video, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.